Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to talk to you about something really important and really close to my heart. I want to share some ideas that help affirm and remind you that you deserve an abuse-free life. And you deserve to heal if you were ever mistreated in the past, including in your childhood, or if things are happening in the context of present day relationships, that you deserve an abuse free life. So I was going through a drawer and I found a handout that I made several years ago. I'm going to show it to you. I gave a presentation at a community center that is for abuse survivors. And my handout says at the top, I just want to share the front page. The back page mostly has some resources, but I want to share this handout with you today. So in the very top corner, I deserve an abuse-free life. I really love this quote by Eleanor Roosevelt. I think when she said it, it was in the context of talking about communities, but I want to bring it even closer to home, thinking about inside families or the context of relationships in the walls of our own homes and houses. She says, "Where, after all, do human rights begin? In small places close to home, so close and so small that they cannot be seen on any map of the world. Unless these rights have meaning there, they have little meaning anywhere." You know, in the context of societies and governments, we will fight for freedom, and it's so important. And yet, in the context of abusive relationships, there is so much oppression going on, and the person's very freedom is suppressed. So I want to share the rest of this front page, and then I'm going to give you some other ideas around how to check in with yourself of if your relationships are safe and if you're protected now, protecting yourself, treated well in your life. So the list of things that I have are, I'm going to go through them quickly because I just want to share them, and I know maybe each one could be its own video. This is a really deep, important topic. And if you're in an unsafe situation, then I encourage you to reach out to community resources for help to make a safety plan for yourself. But sometimes we're in relationships where there's subtle abuse going on, and maybe like in the last video I said, we have conditioning and programming running, and we haven't even thought to maybe stand up for ourselves and set some boundaries. So I want to share a few things about abusers and then the effects on victims. And I debated a little bit about when we would dive into this because it goes into some personality disorder stuff that's going to require some more time, and it's something that I'm very passionate about. But I will just briefly go over this list with you today. Narcissism and narcissistic supply, lack of empathy, have a cycle in relationships: idolize, devalue, discard. And they often follow the cycle of violence, which doesn't have to be physical violence, but the cycle of dysfunctional relationships are the buildup of the tension, the blow up, and then the honeymoon phase, the sorry, things are going to be better, and the hope again. And I want to explain something with that because there's this phrase called trauma bonding. And sometimes people think trauma bonding is, oh, we're bonding over similar trauma, is something you do with a friend or another survivor. And when I use the word, I use it clinically. And trauma bonding is very related to even chemicals being released in the body. And it has to do with a relationship where there always has to be some good as well. So it has that cycle of violence that has the good and then the bad. And then it has the little bit of wounding. And then it has the relief and the apology and the good again that's restored. And what we know clinically through studies have shown this, that that kind of relationship intensifies the bond. I know sometimes people don't understand domestic violence and why doesn't a person just leave? And it really has to do with this understanding trauma bonding and how it works, the science behind it, what's going on in the brain, and that it has to do with chemicals being released and attachment trauma. And so what happens is when there's the little bit of good and the little bit of wounding and then the little bit of good again, the person's brain is going to remember after the wounding the next time, I just need things to get back to where they were. And the person that devalued, the person that did the injury or the insult or the devaluing, is the one that it feels so good to get that relief from, that all is right in the world again. They've apologized, almost like that power is given away, and they reassign that value back to the person. But this is what happens in abusive relationships. So what happens over time is you would think the bond when someone is being abusive in a relationship, you would think that that would lessen and that a person would just get away. But when there is the good and then the bad intermittently, the bond actually intensifies. You know, if someone is just awful and a jerk, it's much easier to get away. So we've got that bond intensifying, that hope for that relief. So that is the definition of trauma bonding. Narcissistic supply is attention, anything that makes someone feel alive and powerful. And sometimes that can include negative attention. It can include being abusive and feeding off the energy of just creating a reaction in another person and making them feel important by creating emotions in another person. So on this handout, I touched a little bit on psychopaths and lack of conscience. So by definition, clinically, we use the DSM, and the personality disorder for psychopaths is antisocial personality disorder. Robert Hare came up with the phrase psychopath, and it is, and there's a checklist of 20 items, and it's also a really great measurement and tool for understanding these kinds of individuals who are disordered and lack conscience. So psychopaths are not usually how it appears in movies. They are charming, they blend in with society, they know what they're doing. And usually that lack of conscience goes undetected because they've learned how to mimic empathy and normal behavior. In the general population, I'm going to give an estimate that I think this is the one that the DSM says. I personally think that traits of narcissism, because it is on a spectrum, you know, to fit that personality disorder, it meets those criteria. And when it meets those criteria and is considered a personality disorder, we really don't see a possibility of change. But there's people who can have some narcissistic traits and they can gain some insight. They've got some empathy and they can learn and change. But again, if you're in an abusive relationship, waiting for change is not the way to go. So the statistic I was going to give is 6% narcissist, 4% psychopath. If you really think about it, that is a lot of people. And if you want to understand more about psychopathy, again, 4% is 1 in 25. But an excellent book is by Martha Stout, The Sociopath Next Door. I highly recommend it. I think you can find online even the introduction. If you listen to those 20 minutes, it's chilling, but really important to wrap our heads around. There is a percentage of the population that we need to protect ourselves from, that we need to be astute and aware. You know, being forgiving and long-suffering, that's great with normal people who have empathy, that learn from their mistakes and apologize and mean it and change their behavior, and they don't abuse us. So I give 3 reasons why abusers abuse. They enjoy control, they lack empathy, and they feel entitled. And then the next concept I have here, the bullet point, is that manipulators and abusers do not respond to compassion, more chances, or free passes. I have a quote by Lundy Bancroft. I actually got to meet him in person, and he wrote a book That is the one recommended on a main domestic violence website. And the book is called Why Does He Do That? It's excellent, really helpful. And here's his quote. He says, "Abusers will not give up their power willingly. It must be taken from them. And the matter is urgent." I know it is so hard to be bold and take action and leave abusive relationships. And again, if you are in one, seek support to make a safe plan. But leaving them is the only route. Waiting for them to stop abusing isn't the answer. So the last thing that I want to share about this handout is the list at the bottom of effects on a victim. Obviously, post-traumatic stress disorder, feelings of worthlessness, loss of self, confusion, anxiety, guilt, fear, trauma bonding that I just explained, and I add a few more things about trauma bonding. Early in the relationship, an imbalance of power is established. 2, there's intermittent acts of kindness and abuse. The kindness provides such intense feelings of relief and feeling valued again after being abused that the victim feels gratitude toward the abuser. This creates intense feelings of love, dependency, and attachment. Something that you might want to look up, another phrase that's really important that I use related to this is Stockholm Syndrome. So then another phrase that's really important is gaslighting. And this one's been used a lot in recent years, and so you probably already know what it means. The term comes from the 1944 movie Gaslight. It is a sophisticated mind control technique, and it can start off subtly of little comments that make a person doubt their own perception of reality. So something like, "Oh, I was just joking," and then, but your own intuition was maybe hurt or offended, or "Oh, that was no big deal," or "That didn't happen." And so it might follow even that exact order like that and get more intense into you're crazy, that didn't even happen. You're remembering things incorrectly. Cognitive dissonance, fear, obligation, guilt. We've talked about these things. The loss of freedom, and then the tendency to continue living in the abusive situation and feeling trapped with the difficulty in escaping. So just some concepts to understand around abuse. And if you have the ability to recognize it in your life, it's a first step. I want to share one more concept with you. I need to see where the video is. You know what? It's at 13 minutes. I'm going to make another video and share another concept with you around recognizing if we're filling ourselves up with self-love, if we're vulnerable to be dependent on getting that value from somebody else. So I know this is a deep topic, and there's going to be many questions. I just hope some of these points help validate a few things for you, but please feel free to ask me questions in the comment section or share your thoughts about this very important topic. And my next video, I'm going to share with you the pizza analogy. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time.